They say the worst betrayals happen in public, where everyone can watch your fall and pretend they didn't see it coming. I was 6 months pregnant when my husband let his mistress pour champagne over my head at a charity gala. The room didn't gasp. They laughed. Cameras came out. Videos went viral before the liquid dried in my hair. I thought I'd married into safety, respectability, protection. I was wrong. And the man who walked through those doors after, the one everyone feared, he was the one I'd run from years ago. Maybe I ran from the wrong man. Like this video, comment what city you're watching from and follow this story to the end. You won't believe where it goes. The Rothmore Hotel ballroom glittered like something out of a dream someone else was having. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, refracting light into 1,000 diamond-sharp points. The marble floors had been polished to a mirror shine, and every surface seemed designed to reflect wealth back at itself. 200 of the city's most influential people milled about in tuxedos and evening gowns, champagne flutes in hand, their laughter practiced and sharp. I stood near the silent auction tables, one hand resting on the swell of my belly, the other clutching a glass of sparkling water someone had handed me out of pity. At 6 months pregnant, I'd outgrown the emerald gown Victor's stylist had picked out for me 3 weeks ago. The fabric pulled tight across my chest and stomach, making me feel like an overstuffed sausage wrapped in expensive silk. I'd mentioned it to Victor that morning, asked if maybe I should wear something else, something that actually fit, and he'd barely looked up from his phone. "You look fine, Lena. Don't be dramatic." Fine. That's what I'd become in the 18 months since we'd married. Fine. Acceptable. A placeholder wife who'd served her purpose by bringing an old family name and a trust fund to merge with his tech empire. Victor was across the room now, holding court near the bar with a cluster of board members and venture capitalists. He looked every inch the self-made billionaire, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair silvered at the temples in that distinguished way that made people trust him with their money. His smile was wide and confident, the kind of smile that had convinced me, once, that he was different from the other men who'd tried to orbit my life. "Lena Hartwell," a woman's voice cut through my thoughts. Margaret Chen, wife of the mayor's chief of staff, descended on me with the kind of enthusiasm that always preceded cruelty. "Look at you, still glowing, I hope." "I'm managing," I said, trying for a smile. 6 months, isn't it, with your first?" Margaret's eyes did a quick sweep of my body, cataloging every flaw. "How exciting! Victor must be over the moon." "He's been busy with work," I said carefully. "Oh, of course. Men." She laughed, a brittle sound. "They never quite know what to do during pregnancy, do they? My husband practically lived at the office when I was carrying James, but he came around eventually. They always do." She didn't believe that. Neither did I. But we both smiled and pretended we were having a real conversation instead of performing the elaborate theater that sustained marriages like ours. Margaret drifted away, and I was alone again. Being alone in a crowd of 200 felt worse than being actually alone. At least in solitude, you could stop pretending. I caught sight of my reflection in one of the ballroom's massive gilt mirrors. My blonde hair, usually sleek and controlled, had started to frizz in the humidity of so many bodies packed together. The dark circles under my eyes showed through the makeup I'd carefully applied. I looked tired. I was tired. Growing a human while maintaining the fiction of a happy marriage took more energy than I had to give. "Mrs. Langford." A server appeared at my elbow with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Would you care for anything?" "No, thank you." My stomach had been unpredictable lately. The baby seemed to have opinions about everything I ate. The server moved away, and I wondered, not for the first time that evening, why I'd come. Victor had insisted, of course. This gala was important. Something about optics, about maintaining appearances, about showing the world that the Langfords were still a power couple, despite the whispers that had started circulating about his company's finances. A burst of laughter erupted from the bar area. Victor's laugh, loud and performative. I glanced over and felt my chest tighten. She was there. Céline Rousseau. 26, French, impossibly beautiful in a white column dress that made her look like she'd stepped out of a perfume ad. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves down her bare back. She stood close to Victor, too close, her hand resting on his forearm as she said something that made him throw his head back and laugh again. Everyone knew. That was the worst part. Margaret Chen knew. The mayor's chief of staff knew. The photographers stationed by the entrance knew. Every person in this ballroom knew that my husband was sleeping with Céline Rousseau, and they'd all decided, collectively and silently, that it was acceptable. Expected, even. Powerful men had mistresses. That's just how the world worked. I took a sip of water, forcing myself to swallow past the lump in my throat. I would not cry here. I would not give them that satisfaction. Lena. Victor's voice carried across the distance between us. Come here. It wasn't a request. I set down my water glass and made my way through the crowd, feeling eyes track my movement. The pregnant wife. Summoned. How quaint. When I reached the bar, Victor didn't look at me. He was still focused on Céline, who regarded me with the kind of amused contempt you might show a particularly boring houseplant. Darling, Victor said, and the endearment sounded like an insult. Céline was just telling me about her new gallery opening. Isn't that fascinating? Fascinating, I echoed. Céline smiled. It's in the meatpacking district. Very exclusive. Invitation only. Her accent made everything sound seductive. Perhaps you've heard of it. I haven't. No. Oh. Céline's smile widened. Well, you've been rather preoccupied, I suppose, with the baby and all. One of the venture capitalists, Harrison Webb, I thought his name was, cleared his throat uncomfortably. Even in a room full of people willing to ignore infidelity, there were limits to acceptable rudeness. Lena, Harrison said, his tone overly hearty. Congratulations on the pregnancy. Victor tells us you're having a boy? Yes, I said. A boy. How wonderful. My wife and I have 3 sons. They're terrors, every one of them, but I wouldn't trade them for anything. He was trying to be kind, I realized. It made me want to scream. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, then pocketed it without responding. Lena, why don't you go sit down? You look tired. I'm fine. You're swaying. His tone had an edge now. Go sit down before you embarrass yourself. I wasn't swaying. My feet hurt from standing in heels, yes, but I was perfectly steady. Still, arguing would only make things worse. I turned to leave, and that's when Céline spoke again. Wait. Her voice was light, playful. Before you go, we should have a toast. To celebrate. She plucked a champagne flute from a passing server's tray and held it up. The golden liquid caught the light, sparkling. To Victor, Céline said, her eyes locked on mine, and to his expanding empire. Victor laughed. I'll drink to that. Céline raised the glass to her lips, tilted her head back, and then, with a movement so casual it seemed almost accidental, she tipped the entire contents onto my head. Champagne poured over me in a cold, fizzing cascade. It soaked into my hair, ran down my face, dripped onto my dress. The liquid burned my eyes. I gasped, stumbling backward, and heard the moment the room realized what had happened. There was a collective intake of breath, then silence. Then horribly someone laughed. It started as a snicker, probably from one of the younger venture capitalists who'd had too much to drink and too little sense. But laughter, in a room full of people looking for permission to be cruel, spreads like a virus. Within seconds, half the ballroom was laughing. Not loud, raucous laughter. Nothing so honest as that. No, this was the polite, suppressed laughter of people who knew they were witnessing something awful and chose to find it entertaining anyway. I stood there, dripping champagne, blinking liquid from my eyes. Victor was laughing too. My husband, the father of my unborn child, was laughing. Oh my God, Céline said, her hand flying to her mouth in mock horror. I'm so sorry, I'm so clumsy. Victor, darling, I didn't mean… It's fine, Victor said, still grinning. Accidents happen. I looked at him. Really looked at him. His eyes were cold, calculating. This wasn't an accident. He'd known what Céline was going to do, and he'd let it happen. Maybe even encouraged it. Victor, I whispered. Go clean yourself up, he said quietly, his smile never faltering. You're making a scene. I was making a scene. I, the pregnant woman with champagne dripping from my hair, was the problem. Around me, phones had come out. I saw the glint of screens, the furtive taps of fingers. They were recording this, photographing it. By tomorrow morning, I would be a meme, a cautionary tale, entertainment for strangers who'd never met me and never would. Margaret Chen was near the front of the crowd, her expression carefully neutral. She'd seen everything, of course. So had the mayor's chief of staff and Harrison Webb and every other person in this room who claimed to respect me, to value the Hartwell name, to appreciate my family's legacy. None of them said a word. I turned and walked toward the exit. My heels clicked against the marble floor, too loud in the terrible silence that had fallen after the laughter died. Champagne dripped down my back, leaving a trail of wet spots on the expensive fabric. I felt it seeping into my skin, sticky and cold. The ballroom doors were 50 feet away. 40. 30. Every step felt like walking through water. My face burned. My hands were shaking. I kept them pressed against my stomach, protecting the baby from nothing and everything. I could hear whispers now. They weren't trying to be quiet. Did you see her face? I can't believe Celine actually did it. Victor must be dying inside. How embarrassing. Embarrassing for him, not for me. For him. I pushed through the doors and into the hotel's grand foyer. The noise of the party cut off behind me, replaced by the hushed elegance of marble columns and plush carpeting. A few hotel staff members glanced my way, took in my champagne-soaked state, and quickly looked away. The bathroom was down a side corridor. I made it 3 steps in that direction before I had to stop, one hand braced against the wall, trying to breathe. This was my life now. This was what I'd chosen when I'd married Victor Langford, when I'd convinced myself that respectability and social standing mattered more than love, more than honesty, more than basic human decency. I'd run away from my first marriage thinking I was escaping danger, thinking I was choosing safety. But standing here, dripping champagne in a hotel corridor while my husband laughed with his mistress, I realized I'd never understood what danger actually looked like. Danger wasn't always violence. Sometimes it was cruelty dressed up in expensive suits. Sometimes it was humiliation served with a smile. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out with shaking hands. A text from an unknown number. Just saw what happened. You okay? Then another text, this time with a video attachment. I clicked it. 30 seconds of footage showing Celine pouring champagne over my head, Victor laughing, me standing there like an idiot. The caption, "When you marry for money but end up paying for it anyway." 7,000 likes already. And climbing. I deleted the message and shoved my phone back into my clutch. My hands were still shaking. Everything was shaking. "Mrs. Langford?" I turned. A hotel concierge stood a respectful distance away, his expression professionally concerned. "Are you all right, ma'am? Can I call someone for you?" "I'm fine," I said automatically. Then, because the lie was too absurd even for me, "I need to leave. Can you call me a car?" "Of course. There's a private exit through the east corridor if you'd prefer to avoid the main entrance." Because, of course, there was. Of course, the Rothmore Hotel, bastion of the wealthy and powerful, had escape routes for disgraced wives who needed to flee before the photographers got their shots. "Thank you," I said. The concierge led me through a series of service corridors, past kitchen staff and housekeepers who quickly averted their eyes. We emerged into a small private courtyard where a black town car was already waiting. "Your driver will take you wherever you need to go," the concierge said. "I've informed them that you're a VIP guest requiring discretion." VIP guest. That's what they called you when you'd just been publicly humiliated by your husband's mistress. Discretion. I climbed into the back seat. The leather was cool against my champagne-sticky skin. The driver glanced at me in the rear-view mirror, his expression carefully blank. "Where to, ma'am?" "Where to?" That was the question, wasn't it? I couldn't go home. The penthouse Victor and I shared overlooked the city like a glass cage, beautiful and suffocating. I couldn't go to my mother's. She'd moved to the Hamptons after my father's death and made it clear that my marriage problems were my own to solve. I had friends, theoretically, but they were all part of Victor's circle now, women who'd watched me get drenched in champagne and done nothing. "Just drive," I said. "I'll figure it out." The car pulled away from the hotel, merging into the late-night traffic. Through the tinted windows, I watched the city slide past. Glittering towers, late-night restaurants, couples walking hand in hand, people living their lives, completely unaware that mine had just collapsed. My phone buzzed again. Another text, another video, another notification that I was trending on social media. I turned the phone off. The baby moved inside me, a flutter of kicks against my ribs. He'd been active tonight, responding to my stress with his own restless energy. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling him shift and turn. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry. Sorry for bringing him into this mess. Sorry for being too weak, too naive, too desperate to escape my past that I'd walked straight into a different kind of prison." The driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we're being followed." I jerked upright. "What?" "Black sedan, 2 cars back. It's been tailing us since we left the hotel." My heart hammered. "Paparazzi?" "I don't think so. They're keeping too consistent a distance. Professional." Professional. That word sent ice through my veins. Victor had security, of course, private contractors who handled sensitive matters. Was he having me followed, making sure I didn't do anything to embarrass him further? "Should I try to lose them?" the driver asked. "No," I said. "Just take me to the Gramercy Park apartment." Victor kept a small apartment near Gramercy Park for entertaining clients who valued discretion. I had a key. He probably wouldn't think to look for me there, at least not tonight. The driver nodded and changed course. The black sedan stayed with us, maintaining that same careful distance. We pulled up in front of a pre-war building with an elegant awning and a doorman who recognized me immediately. I climbed out of the car, still dripping champagne, and the doorman's professionally neutral expression flickered for just a second. "Mrs. Langford," he said. "Good evening." "Good evening, Thomas." The black sedan had stopped half a block away, engine still running. Through the tinted windows, I couldn't see who was inside. "Thomas," I said quietly, "do you see that car?" "Yes, ma'am." "If anyone from that vehicle tries to follow me inside, don't let them." "Understood." I crossed the lobby to the elevator, feeling the weight of eyes on my back. The elevator doors closed, and I sagged against the wall, letting myself feel for just a moment how utterly exhausted I was. The apartment was on the 8th floor. I let myself in and stood in the darkened entryway, not bothering to turn on the lights. The space was impersonal, decorated by someone who'd been paid to make it look expensive without making it feel lived in. Chrome and marble, abstract art, furniture that prioritized aesthetics over comfort. I walked to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror. Champagne had dried in my hair, leaving it stiff and sticky. My makeup had run in dark streaks down my face. The emerald dress, which had cost more than most people's monthly rent, was ruined. I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who'd been broken. I turned on the shower and peeled off the dress, letting it fall in a sodden heap on the floor. The hot water felt like salvation, washing away champagne and humiliation in equal measure. I stood under the spray until my skin turned pink, until I couldn't cry anymore, until I was too numb to feel anything at all. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, I found my phone buzzing on the bathroom counter. I turned it off. I was sure of it. But there it was, screen lit up with incoming calls. Victor's name flashed again and again. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched it ring, watched his name appear and disappear until finally the calls stopped. A text came through. "Where are you?" Then another. "This is childish, Lena." Then, "You embarrassed me tonight." I embarrassed him. Of course. His mistress had poured champagne on his pregnant wife in front of 200 people, and somehow I was the one who'd caused the problem. I deleted the messages without responding. Another text, this time from a number I didn't recognize. "I need to speak with you. It's important." I was about to delete that one too when another message came through from the same number. "I'm downstairs, the black sedan. Please, 5 minutes." My blood ran cold. The sedan that had been following me. Someone knew where I was. This wasn't paparazzi. This wasn't Victor's security. This was something else. I should have been terrified. I should have called building security, called the police, called someone who could protect me. Instead, I felt something different. Curiosity. Or maybe it was desperation. What else did I have to lose? I got dressed in the only clothes I could find in the apartment. A pair of Victor's sweatpants rolled at the waist, a t-shirt that hung loose on my frame. I looked ridiculous, but I was past caring. Thomas, the doorman, frowned when I appeared in the lobby. "Mrs. Langford, are you going back out?" "Just for a moment," I said. "That car that was following me. Tell me about it." Thomas hesitated. "It's still there, ma'am. Same position." "Has anyone gotten out?" "No, ma'am. But—" He paused. I did get a clear look at it when you arrived. Diplomatic plates. Diplomatic plates? Korean consulate, if I'm not mistaken. The world tilted sideways. Korean consulate. No. It couldn't be. Thank you, Thomas, I heard myself say. I walked outside. The night air was cold against my damp hair. The black sedan sat exactly where it had been before, a sleek, expensive ghost. As I approached, the rear door opened. A figure stepped out onto the sidewalk and the streetlight caught his face. I stopped walking. It had been 3 years since I'd seen Daejin Mercer. 3 years since I'd fled in the middle of the night, leaving behind everything except my maiden name and a desperate need to disappear. 3 years since I'd convinced myself that running from him was the smartest thing I'd ever done. He looked the same. Tall, lean, with dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and careful control. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my ruined evening gown, and his hands were tucked casually into his pockets, like he'd just stepped out for a walk instead of tracking down his ex-wife. "Hello, Lena," Daejin said. His voice was quiet, barely audible over the city traffic, but it cut through the noise like a blade. "We need to talk." I should have run. Should have screamed for Thomas, for help, for anyone who could put distance between me and the man I'd married when I was 22 and left when I was 23. Instead, I heard myself say, 5 minutes, that's all you get. Daejin's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Relief, maybe. Or satisfaction. 5 minutes, he agreed. That's all I need. I climbed into the back seat of the sedan before I could talk myself out of it. Daejin slid in beside me, keeping a careful distance between us, and pulled the door shut. The interior smelled like leather and something else. His cologne, probably, though I didn't remember him wearing any when we were married. The driver didn't turn around, didn't acknowledge my presence. Professional, discreet, exactly the kind of person Daejin would employ. 5 minutes, I said again, crossing my arms over my chest. The baby kicked, as if registering his own protest. Daejin's eyes flicked to my stomach, then back to my face. "You're pregnant. Observant as ever. How far along?" "That's none of your business." He nodded slowly, like he'd expected that response. "You're right, I apologize." That threw me. Daejin didn't apologize. At least he hadn't when I'd known him. He'd been too proud, too certain of his own righteousness. But the man sitting beside me now seemed different somehow, older maybe, or just more tired. "Why are you here?" I asked. "How did you even find me?" "I've always known where you were, Lena." The word sent a chill down my spine. "What?" "I've been keeping track of you since you left, making sure you were safe." He said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. "I had people watching from a distance. They never interfered. You wouldn't have known they were there." "That's..." I struggled to find the word. "That's insane. That's stalking." Perhaps. Daejin's expression remained neutral. Or perhaps it's what someone does when they care about a person who ran away in the middle of the night without explanation. I had explanations, I snapped. Plenty of them. "You had fears. That's different." I turned to face him fully. Even in the dim light of the car's interior, I could see the details I'd tried to forget. The scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the way his jaw tightened when he was holding back anger, the controlled stillness that had always unsettled me. "My fears were justified," I said. You are dangerous. Everyone said so. Your business, your associates, the things people whispered about you, were mostly true," Daejin interrupted. "I won't lie to you about what I do or who I am, but I never brought that danger home to you. I never would have. You can't separate those things. You can't be one person in the world and another person at home. It doesn't work that way. Doesn't it?" He tilted his head slightly. "Your current husband seems to manage it quite well. Respectable businessman in public. Something else entirely in private." My hands clenched into fists. "Don't talk about Victor." "Why not? He's the reason I'm here." Daejin shifted in his seat, angling toward me. "I saw what happened tonight, at the gala." Heat flooded my face. "You were there?" "No, but video travels fast. One of my people sent it to me within minutes." His voice remained even, controlled, but I caught something underneath, a current of anger, tightly leashed. "He let her humiliate you, in front of everyone while you're carrying his child. It was an accident, I said automatically, then hated myself for defending Victor. It wasn't. Dejin's certainty was absolute, and you know it wasn't. I did know. That was the worst part. I'd known it the moment Celine had lifted that champagne flute, known it when Victor laughed, known it when the whole room decided my humiliation was entertainment. What do you want, Dejin? He was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with an intensity that made me want to look away. I didn't. I'd learned during our brief marriage that looking away from Dejin Mercer was interpreted as weakness. I want you to tell me the truth, he said finally. Are you safe? Of course I'm safe. That's not what I asked. I asked if you are safe. You, specifically. Not Victor's reputation, not your social standing. You. The distinction felt important, though I couldn't articulate why. I'm fine. You're lying. I'm managing. Lena. He said my name like a reprimand. You're 6 months pregnant, your husband is openly cheating on you, and tonight he stood by while his mistress assaulted you in public. That's not managing. That's survival. I swallowed hard. Maybe survival is enough. It's not, and you know it's not, or you wouldn't have gotten into this car. He was right. I hated that he was right. I'd climbed into this sedan knowing exactly who was inside, knowing what it meant, knowing that every second I sat here was a betrayal of the new life I'd built, the safe life, the respectable life. Except none of it had been safe. None of it had been real. Why do you care? I asked. I left you. I divorced you. I disappeared without a trace and rebuilt my entire life specifically to get away from you. I know. So why are you here? Revenge? Satisfaction? Do you want to see how badly I fucked up my second chance? I'm here, Dejin said quietly. Because despite everything, despite how you left, despite the fact that you clearly believed I was some kind of monster, I never stopped caring whether you were safe, and right now, you're not. The baby kicked again, harder this time. I pressed my hand against the spot, feeling him shift restlessly. Dejin's eyes tracked the movement. Boy or girl? He asked. Boy. Something crossed his face, an emotion I couldn't name. Have you picked a name? Not yet. Victor wants to name him after his father, but I stopped, realizing what I was doing, confiding in him, falling into the old pattern of letting Dejin into spaces I'd promised myself I'd keep locked. This isn't your concern. You're right. It's not. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. But if you need help, any kind of help, call this number, day or night. Someone will answer. I took the card without looking at it. I don't need your help. Then throw it away. But keep it long enough to make that decision when you're not running on adrenaline and champagne. I wasn't drinking champagne. I was wearing it. The corner of his mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Fair point. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city continued its endless churn, taxis honking, people shouting, sirens wailing in the distance. Normal life, happening to people who weren't sitting in the back of a car with their ex-husband discussing the ruins of their current marriage. I should go, I said. I'll have my driver take you back up. No, I can walk. I reached for the door handle, then paused. Dejin? Yes? Stop having people follow me. It's creepy and I don't need your protection. He didn't agree or disagree, just watched me with those dark, unreadable eyes. Be careful, Lena. I climbed out of the car and walked back toward the apartment building without looking back. Thomas held the door open, his expression carefully neutral, and I rode the elevator up in silence. The apartment felt even emptier than before. I collapsed onto the couch, still holding Dejin's business card, and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. Victor, calling again. I declined it. Another text. I know you're at the Gramercy place. We need to talk. Of course he knew. Victor always knew where I was. He'd probably had security track my phone the moment I left the hotel. The phone rang again. This time, I answered. Lena. Victor's voice was sharp. What the hell do you think you're doing? Sitting on a couch. You? Don't be cute. You walked out of the gala. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound felt foreign in my throat. I embarrassed you? This isn't funny. Do you have any idea what kind of optics? Your mistress poured champagne on me, Victor. Your mistress at a public event in front of 200 people. And you laughed. It was an accident. No, it wasn't. A pause. When Victor spoke again, his voice had shifted to that particular tone he used when he was trying to manage me. Calm, reasonable. The voice of a man explaining simple facts to someone too stupid to understand them. Lena, you're emotional right now. Pregnant women get emotional, but you need to think clearly about what's at stake here. Our reputation, our standing, the baby's future. The baby's future, I repeated flatly. Yes, do you want him growing up with parents who are tabloid fodder? Who can't maintain basic dignity in public? I maintain plenty of dignity. I walked out instead of screaming at you like I should have. You made a scene by leaving. You made a scene by letting your mistress assault me. My voice had risen. I was shaking again, the same way I'd shaken in the hotel corridor. The baby responded to my stress with a flurry of movements, like he was trying to escape. Victor sighed. Come home. We'll talk about this rationally when you've calmed down. I'm not coming home tonight. Lena, I need space. I need to think. About what? About how you're going to spin this to save face? Because let me be clear, if you try to make me look bad, if you go running to the press or your society friends with some sob story, I will make your life very difficult. I have lawyers who would love to discuss custody arrangements for our son. The threat landed like a physical blow. You wouldn't. Try me. His voice was cold now, stripped of pretense. You signed a prenup. You have no independent income. Your mother's estate is tied up in trusts you can't access without my approval. If we divorce, you get nothing. And given your history of erratic behavior, running away from your first marriage, making scenes at public events, I don't think any judge would grant you primary custody. My history of erratic behavior? I could barely get the words out. Are you serious? Document everything, Lena. That's what my lawyers tell me. Document every tantrum, every irrational decision, every time you put your own feelings ahead of our family's well-being. It builds a pattern. You're threatening to take my son away because your mistress dumped champagne on me and I didn't smile through it? I'm telling you how the world works. You can either accept that and come home, or you can keep making things harder for yourself. Your choice. He hung up. I sat there, phone clutched in my hand, staring at nothing. The apartment was too quiet. My heart was beating too fast. Every breath felt like it required conscious effort. Victor was right about one thing. I had no money of my own. My father's fortune had been placed in complicated trusts when he died, trusts that required spousal approval to access. I thought it was romantic when Victor offered to handle the paperwork, to make sure everything was properly managed. Now I realized it was a cage. And my history with Daejin, that would absolutely be used against me. Marrying at 22, divorcing at 23. No clear explanation for why. Victor's lawyers would paint me as unstable, impulsive, unfit. Maybe they'd be right. I looked down at Daejin's business card. Plain white, expensive stock. Just a phone number, no name. I should throw it away. Getting involved with him again, even tangentially, would only make everything worse. Instead, I tucked it into my wallet. I tried to sleep on the couch, but gave up after an hour of staring at the ceiling. My mind wouldn't shut off. It kept replaying the evening, Celine's smile, Victor's laugh, the champagne soaking into my hair, 200 people pulling out their phones. By morning, I'd be a trending topic again. The abandoned wife, the humiliated pregnant woman. Everyone would have opinions about what I should have done, how I should have responded, whether I deserved it. Around 3 a.m, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. Not Daejin's. I'd memorized the number on his card. Someone else. I answered without thinking. Hello? Mrs. Langford? A woman's voice, young, nervous. I'm sorry to call so late. I got your number from... I'm not supposed to say, but I thought you should know. There's a video from the gala. It's going viral. I know, I said tiredly. I've seen it. Not that video. A different one. Someone recorded what happened after you left. Mr. Langford and Miss Rousseau in the ballroom. Ice flooded my veins. What happened? The woman paused. Maybe you should just watch it. I'm texting you a link now. I'm sorry. I thought you had a right to know. She hung up before I could respond. A moment later, the text came through. I shouldn't click it. I knew I shouldn't. Nothing good could come from watching whatever this was. I clicked it anyway. The video was grainy, shot from across the ballroom on someone's phone, but the audio was clear. Victor and Celine standing near the bar, half hidden by a pillar. They thought they were out of earshot. They were wrong. Went perfectly, Celine was saying. Did you see her face? Victor laughed. She actually thought I'd defend her. It was pathetic. You're sure she won't fight the divorce? She can't afford to. I've made sure of that. Victor's voice was full of satisfaction. By the time my lawyers are done, she'll be lucky if I let her see the kid on weekends. And the baby? You're sure it's yours? My breath caught. The baby. Our son. The child I'd been growing for 6 months. The one who kicked against my ribs when I was stressed. The one whose nursery Victor had insisted on decorating in shades of blue and gray. DNA test the day he's born, Victor said. If he's mine, great. If not, even better. Either way, she's out. And then we can finally stop pretending. Celine's voice turned playful. I'm tired of being the mistress. I want the ring. You'll get it. Just need to wait until after the baby's born. Better optics. Divorcing a pregnant woman looks bad, but divorcing someone who just gave birth? That's a private family matter. People move on. They laughed together, clinked glasses. The video ended. I played it again, then again, making sure I'd heard correctly, making sure this was real. Victor had planned this, all of it. The public humiliation tonight wasn't Celine being petty. It was strategy, a way to establish a pattern of my instability for the divorce proceedings. The lawyers he'd mentioned weren't a threat. They were already working, building a case, preparing to take my son away. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. The baby was moving again, responding to my panic with his own distressed movements. I pressed both hands against my stomach, trying to calm him, trying to calm myself. It's okay, I whispered. It's okay. I won't let him take you. I won't. But how? Victor had money, lawyers, connections, power. I had nothing. My own family's money was locked behind trusts he controlled. My friends were his friends. My reputation was being demolished in real time on social media. I looked at my phone, 4 a.m, too late to call anyone. Too early to think clearly. I pulled out Dejin's business card. Day or night, he'd said. Someone will answer. I dialed the number before I could stop myself. It rang once. A man's voice answered, alert despite the hour. Yes? My voice cracked. I need to speak to Dejin. Name? Lena Hartwell. I used my maiden name without thinking. 1 moment. Silence. Then, less than 10 seconds later, Dejin's voice. Lena? What's wrong? I need help. The words came out broken. You were right. I'm not safe. Victor, he's planning... I couldn't get the rest out. Where are you? The Gramercy apartment. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Don't open the door for anyone else. Dejin? 15 minutes. Stay on the line. I stayed on the line. Neither of us spoke, but I could hear him moving, could hear the sounds of a car starting, traffic passing. The silence wasn't empty. It was full of everything we weren't saying. I'm sorry, I finally whispered. For what? For calling. For involving you. For... Lena. His voice was firm. Whatever's happening, we'll handle it. But right now I need you to breathe. Can you do that for me? I tried. The breath caught halfway, turned into something like a sob. I'm scared. I know, but you're not alone anymore. 13 minutes later, I counted. Someone knocked on the door. 3 sharp raps. It's me, Dejin said from the hallway. I opened the door. He was dressed more casually than before. Black jeans, a dark sweater, no tie. He looked like he'd been sleeping when I called, which made me feel even worse about dragging him into this. Come in, I said. He stepped inside, taking in the apartment with a quick, assessing glance. Professional habits, probably, looking for threats, exits, vulnerabilities. Then his eyes landed on me, and his expression shifted into something harder to read. You've been crying. I saw a video. I handed him my phone. Watch it. He did, his face growing progressively colder as the audio played. When it ended, he handed the phone back. "Send that to me," he said. "The original file, if you have it, not a screenshot." "Why?" "Because I'm going to make sure it's preserved properly. And then I'm going to destroy Victor Langford." The certainty in his voice should have scared me. Maybe it would have 3 years ago, when I was too naive to understand the difference between dangerous men and dangerous situations. "You can't," I said. "He has lawyers, he has money, he has nothing that matters." Dejin's voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it I heard the same current of rage I'd caught earlier. Men like Victor build their power on reputation and fear. Take those away and they collapse. "How? Let me worry about that. Right now I need you to tell me what you want." "What do you mean?" "I mean, what outcome do you want from this? Divorce with custody? Financial independence? Complete disappearance? Tell me what you need, and I'll make it happen." I stared at him. 3 years ago, I'd run from Dejin because I thought he was too controlling, too dangerous, too willing to solve problems with methods I couldn't stomach. But standing in this apartment at 4 a.m, watching him offer to dismantle my husband's life like it was a simple logistics problem, I finally understood what I'd been too young to see before. Dejin had never controlled me. He'd never threatened me. He'd never made me feel small or weak or trapped. He'd built walls around me, yes, but those walls had been meant to keep danger out, not to keep me in. Victor, on the other hand, had built a cage and convinced me it was a home. "I want my son," I said. "I want full custody, and I want Victor to never be able to threaten me with lawyers again. I want enough money that I'm not dependent on anyone, and I want—" I hesitated. "What?" "I want him to understand what he did. I want him to know that you can't just humiliate people and expect no consequences." Dejin nodded slowly. "That's reasonable." "Is it?" "Absolutely." He pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. "I'm having someone bring you clothes and essentials. You're not staying here. This apartment is in Victor's name, which means he has access." "Where am I going?" "One of my properties. Secure building, private entrance, 24-hour security. You'll be safe there while we sort this out." "Dejin, I can't just—" "Yes, you can. You called me for help. This is what help looks like." He was right. I'd called him because I had nowhere else to turn, because Victor had systematically eliminated every other option, because Dejin was the only person I knew who could stand up to someone like my husband. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay?" He pocketed his phone. "Pack whatever you need from here. We're leaving in 20 minutes. I moved through the apartment like a ghost, gathering the few personal items I'd left here over the months. A sweater, some books, toiletries from the bathroom. It wasn't much. I'd never really lived here, just hidden here occasionally when Victor's penthouse felt too suffocating. Dejin watched from the doorway, silent and still, giving me space to process. When I was done, he took my bag without comment and led me downstairs. Thomas was at the front desk, his expression carefully blank as he watched me leave with Dejin. If he had opinions about what was happening, he kept them to himself. The black sedan was waiting at the curb. Dejin held the door for me and I climbed in, feeling like I was crossing some invisible threshold. The person who'd left the gala tonight had been Victor's wife. The person in this car was something else. Someone else. We drove through empty streets, the city quiet in that particular way it only gets in the hours before dawn. I watched the buildings slide past, feeling unmoored from reality. "How did you know?" I asked finally. "That I wasn't safe with Victor. How did you know before I did?" Dejin was quiet for a moment. "I've been tracking his company's finances for the last 6 months. There were irregularities, money moving in ways that suggested he was preparing for something. When I heard you'd married him, I started paying closer attention." "You investigated my husband?" "I investigated everyone you spent significant time with. It's what I do." He said it without apology. "Victor's company is drowning in debt. The tech sector investments he made last year collapsed. He's been propping up the appearance of success with borrowed money and creative accounting. He needs your family's trusts to stay afloat." So I was just, what, a financial strategy? Initially, yes, but then you got pregnant and that complicated things for him. A child means long-term obligations, custody battles, support payments. Easier to discard you and find someone else. Someone like Celine, whose family has the kind of liquid assets Victor needs right now. It made horrible sense. The timing of the pregnancy, Victor's increasing coldness, Celine's sudden prominence in his life. I thought I was failing as a wife. Really, I just stopped being useful. I'm such an idiot, I said. No, you trusted someone who didn't deserve it. That's not the same thing. The car pulled up in front of a sleek high-rise in Tribeca. Dejin led me through a private entrance to an elevator that required both a key card and a fingerprint scan. We rode up in silence. The apartment was nothing like Victor's showpiece penthouse. This was a home, warm lighting, comfortable furniture, art that looked chosen for love rather than investment value. There were books on the shelves, real books with creased spines and dog-eared pages. Guest room is through there, Dejin said, pointing. Bathroom's stocked. Kitchen has food. Help yourself to anything. I'll be in the study if you need me. You're staying? Someone needs to be here. I have work I can do remotely. Dejin, you don't have to... I know. He met my eyes. Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be difficult. He left me alone in the guest room. I sat on the edge of the bed, still holding my bag, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 6 hours. At midnight, I'd been at a charity gala, playing the role of dutiful wife. Now I was in my ex-husband's apartment, planning the destruction of my current husband's life. The absurdity of it should have made me laugh. Instead, I lay down on the bed, fully clothed, and finally let myself cry. I woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows, and the smell of coffee drifting from somewhere in the apartment. For a confused moment, I thought I was back in the Gramercy place, then remembered. Dejin's apartment. Safe, he'd said. The word felt foreign. My phone was buzzing on the nightstand. 17 missed calls from Victor. 43 text messages. I scrolled through them, watching his tone shift from angry to threatening to almost conciliatory before cycling back to rage. The last message sent at 7 in the morning. You're making a mistake. Come home now, and we can forget this happened. I turned the phone face down and hauled myself out of bed. My body felt heavy, unfamiliar. The baby was quiet for once, maybe exhausted from yesterday's stress. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling for movement. A small flutter answered back. Still there, still okay. The bathroom was stocked like Dejin had promised. Expensive toiletries, thick towels, even a toothbrush still in its package. I showered quickly, trying not to think about how he'd known to prepare for this, how long he'd been anticipating that I might need a place to run. When I emerged, dressed in the same clothes from last night, I found Dejin in the kitchen. He'd changed into a crisp white shirt and dark slacks, looking more like the man I remembered, controlled, precise, unreadable. 2 mugs of coffee sat on the counter. He pushed one toward me. Decaf, he said before I could ask. Pregnancy's safe. You didn't have to... I know what pregnant women can and can't consume, Lena. Sit. I sat at the kitchen island, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. Dejin remained standing, his own coffee untouched, his phone face up on the counter between us. I have someone I want you to meet, he said. Her name is Rachel Kim, best divorce attorney in the city. She's handled cases like yours before, high net worth spouse, custody complications, prenuptial agreements that need to be challenged. Can a prenup be challenged? Under certain circumstances. Fraud, coercion, unconscionability. Rachel will know. He picked up his phone and tapped something. She can be here in an hour if you're ready. I don't have money to pay her. I'm paying her. Dejin, this isn't negotiable. His tone left no room for argument. You need representation. I'm providing it. We can discuss repayment later if it makes you feel better, but right now, that's not the priority. I took a sip of coffee. It was good. Better than anything I'd made for myself in months. Why are you doing this? I told you, I care whether you're safe. That's not a real answer. He was quiet for a moment, studying his coffee like it held answers. When you left, he said finally, I was angry. For a long time, I thought you'd thrown away something good because you were too scared to see what we actually had. But then I watched you build a new life. Marry someone respectable, someone safe, and I thought maybe you'd found what you needed. I didn't. No. He looked up, meeting my eyes. You found something worse, and I'm angry about that too, but not at you, at myself. I should have made sure you understood the difference between fear and danger before you ran towards something that actually could hurt you. The words sat heavy between us. I wanted to argue, to defend my choices, to explain that leaving him had made sense at the time. But sitting in his kitchen, drinking his coffee, wearing yesterday's clothes because I'd fled my own home in the middle of the night, what defense did I have? I was 23, I said instead. I didn't know anything. You knew enough to be scared. That's not nothing. Dejin picked up his phone again. Rachel will be here at 10. Until then, I need you to write down everything you remember about your marriage to Victor. Every threat, every incident, every time he made you feel unsafe. Dates if you can remember them. Details matter in court. That's going to be a long list. Good. The longer the better. He slid a leather notebook and pen across the counter. I'll be in the study. If you need anything, I know, you'll be right there. He nodded and left me alone with my coffee and my memories. I stared at the blank page for a long time before I started writing. The first entry was easy. Last night, the gala, Celine and the champagne. But once I started, other moments came flooding back. The time Victor had screamed at me for 20 minutes because I'd forgotten to confirm a dinner reservation. The way he'd isolated me from my college friends, claiming they were bad influences. How he'd insisted on managing all my finances, even the money from my father's estate. Small cruelties I'd rationalized at the time, convinced myself were normal, signs of a man who cared about details. I was 3 pages in when someone knocked on the apartment door. Dejin appeared from the study immediately, checking the security screen before opening it. Rachel, he said, thank you for coming. The woman who entered was in her mid-40s, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun. She carried a leather briefcase and moved with the kind of confidence that came from winning cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. Dejin. She nodded at him, then turned to me. Mrs. Langford, I presume. Lena. Just Lena. Lena. Rachel's handshake was firm, professional. I've reviewed the materials Dejin sent over this morning. We have a lot to discuss. She set her briefcase on the kitchen island and pulled out a tablet and several folders. Dejin excused himself, disappearing back into the study, leaving us alone. First things first, Rachel said, pulling up a document on her tablet. I need to understand your financial situation. Dejin mentioned your family has trusts? Yes, my father died 5 years ago. He left everything in trust that requires spousal approval to access. Victor's been managing them. Does he have power of attorney? I don't know. Maybe? He handled all the paperwork. Rachel made a note. We'll need to get copies of those trust documents immediately. If he's been managing your assets without proper authorization, that's a problem. For him. She looked up. What about the prenuptial agreement? Do you have a copy? Victor's lawyers have it. I signed it 3 days before the wedding. His legal team said it was standard. Nothing is standard when one party has significantly more bargaining power than the other. Rachel's expression was grim. Did you have independent legal counsel review it before you signed? Victor said I didn't need a lawyer, that it was just a formality to protect both of us. That's coercion, possibly fraud, depending on what the document actually says. She made another note. I'm going to need you to walk me through the circumstances of your marriage. How you met, how quickly things moved, what the power dynamic looked like, every detail you can remember. For the next hour, I told her everything. How I'd met Victor at a fundraiser 6 months after my divorce from Dejin. How he'd seemed safe, stable, the opposite of everything I'd been running from. How quickly he'd proposed 3 months, and how he'd made it seem romantic rather than rushed. How the wedding had been planned by his assistant and his mother while I'd felt like a spectator in my own life. Rachel listened without interrupting, her stylus moving across the tablet in quick, efficient strokes. When I finished, she sat back and studied me with sharp, assessing eyes. Your husband is going to argue that you're mentally unstable, she said bluntly. He's already laying the groundwork with last night's incident. The narrative will be that you're erratic, possibly dangerous, not fit to have custody of your son. I'm not unstable. I know that. But perception matters in family court. We need to control the narrative before he does. She pulled up another document. I'm going to file for emergency custody protection today. That prevents him from taking the baby after birth without court approval. I'm also filing a restraining order based on the threats he made last night about taking your son away. Will that work? It'll buy us time. And time is what we need to build a proper case. Rachel leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Victor's lawyers will try to paint you as a gold digger who married him for money and is now trying to extort him in divorce. They'll bring up your previous marriage to discredit you, young bride who couldn't handle a real relationship, that sort of thing. We need to flip that narrative. Show that you're a woman who's been systematically isolated and financially controlled by a manipulative husband. That's the truth. Truth is a good starting point, but we need evidence. Texts, emails, financial records, witness statements, anything that shows a pattern of controlling behavior. She glanced toward the study where Dae-jin had disappeared. Dae-jin mentioned there's a video from last night? I pulled out my phone and showed her. Rachel watched it twice, her expression growing colder each time. This is good, she said when it finished. Very good. It establishes premeditation. He's been planning this divorce, planning to take your child, planning to destroy your reputation. That plays well in court. What about the prenup? I'll need to see it first, but based on what you've told me, there are grounds to challenge it. Lack of independent counsel, signing under duress close to the wedding date, possible misrepresentation of assets. If we can prove Victor wasn't forthcoming about his financial situation when you signed, and given what Dae-jin's told me about his company's real condition, I think we can. Then the prenup becomes voidable. Hope flickered in my chest for the first time since last night. So I might actually have a chance? You have more than a chance. You have a strong case. But Lena, Rachel's tone sharpened. You need to understand what you're walking into. Victor Langford is not going to go quietly. He has money, connections, and a vested interest in destroying you to protect himself. This will get ugly, very ugly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the champagne dripping down my face, the laughter, the videos, the threat in Victor's voice when he told me he'd take my son away. Yes, I said. I'm prepared. Rachel nodded, satisfied. Good. Then let's get to work. She spent another hour going through details, bank accounts, credit cards, property deeds, insurance policies. Everything that tied me financially to Victor needed to be documented, examined, potentially challenged. By the time she left, my head was spinning with legal terms and strategy discussions. Dae-jin emerged from the study after Rachel's departure. How did it go? She thinks we have a case. She wouldn't have taken it if she didn't. He leaned against the kitchen counter, studying me. How are you feeling? Tired, angry, scared. I rubbed my face, all of it at once. That's reasonable. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Victor. I know you're with him. Your ex-husband. Very smart, Lena. That'll look great in court. I showed Dae-jin the message. His expression didn't change, but something dark flickered behind his eyes. He's having you followed, Dae-jin said, or he's tracking your phone. Either way, he knows you're here. Does that matter? For your case? No. Rachel can argue you sought help from someone you trusted when your husband became threatening, for your immediate safety. He pulled out his own phone. That's a different question. I'm going to have security increased on the building. No one gets up here without explicit clearance. You think Victor would actually try something? I think desperate men do desperate things, and Victor is about to become very desperate. Dae-jin typed something quickly. I'm also going to have a new phone delivered for you. Clean device, untraceable. You can keep your current phone for documentation purposes, but use the new one for any sensitive communications. This is insane. 2 days ago, I stopped, not sure how to finish that sentence. What had I been 2 days ago? Victor's wife. A soon-to-be mother. A woman living a life that looked perfect from the outside and was rotting from within. 2 days ago, you were surviving, Dae-jin said quietly. Now you're fighting back. That feels insane because it's unfamiliar, but you'll adjust. How can you be so sure? Because I know you. The woman I married was strong enough to leave me when she thought she needed to. That takes courage. This takes the same kind of courage, just pointed in a different direction. The compliment, if that's what it was, caught me off guard. I wasn't courageous when I left you. I was terrified. Fear and courage aren't opposites. Courage is what you do despite the fear. He straightened. I have some calls to make. Are you hungry? I can order food. I should probably eat something. The baby gets cranky when I skip meals. Something crossed Dae-jin's face again. that same unreadable expression from last night when I'd told him I was having a boy. What is he like? What? The baby. What foods does he respond well to? I blinked, surprised. Fruit, mostly. Strawberries, melon, anything sweet. I'll have someone bring groceries. He was already typing on his phone. Anything else you need? Clothes would be good. Everything I have is at the penthouse or the Gramercy apartment. I'll take care of it. He paused. Sizes? I told him, feeling strange about the intimacy of it. This man I'd once shared a bed with, now cataloging my maternity measurements like he was planning a military operation, which, in a way, he was. The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls and planning. Rachel called twice with updates. She'd filed the emergency motions, Victor's lawyers had already responded with their own filings, a court date was set for the following week. A courier arrived with a new phone, activated and ready to use. Another courier brought clothes, not just maternity wear, but comfortable things, soft fabrics and practical cuts. Someone else delivered groceries, including 3 different types of melon and 2 cartons of strawberries. Dajan orchestrated all of it from his study, appearing periodically to check on me before disappearing back into whatever he was doing. I caught glimpses of his work, phone conversations in Korean, video calls with serious-looking men in suits, spreadsheets and documents I didn't understand. Around 6 in the evening, he emerged and found me on the couch, staring at my old phone. The messages from Victor had stopped around noon, replaced by messages from people I barely knew, friends from the social circuit, acquaintances from charity boards, even Margaret Chen from the gala. They all said versions of the same thing. Are you okay? I heard what happened. Let me know if you need anything. Empty offers from people who'd stood by and watched me get humiliated. People who'd laughed or filmed or simply looked away. Don't respond to them, Dajan said, reading over my shoulder. Not yet. I wasn't planning to. I set the phone aside. They don't actually care. They just want information so they can gossip about it later. Probably. He sat down in the chair across from me, finally looking tired. But some of them might surprise you. People who stay silent publicly sometimes have reasons. Fear, mostly, of losing social standing, of being associated with scandal. It's not admirable, but it's human. You sound like you're defending them. I'm not. I'm just saying that very few people are actually brave when it costs them something. The ones who stand up for you despite the cost, those are the ones who matter. I thought about the woman who'd called me in the middle of the night to warn me about the video. Someone in Victor's circle who'd seen what was happening and decided to act. I didn't even know her name. Someone sent me that video, I said. The one of Victor and Celine talking. She risked her job, maybe worse, to make sure I knew what he was planning. Then she's one of the brave ones. Dajan leaned back in his chair. You'll meet more of them. Once people realize you're serious about fighting back, about not being the victim Victor wants you to be, some of them will step forward. Not everyone, but some. And Victor? What happens to him? Dajan's expression shifted into something colder. What do you want to happen to him? I don't know. Yesterday I would have said I wanted him to suffer the way he made me suffer. Now I just want him gone. Out of my life. Unable to hurt me or take my son. That's achievable. How? Because Victor's entire empire is built on perception. Take away the perception and the empire collapses. Dajan pulled out his phone and showed me a document. This is Victor's real financial situation. The company he claims is worth billions? It's leveraged to the breaking point. He's been borrowing from investors to pay back other investors. Classic pyramid scheme, just dressed up in tech sector legitimacy. I scanned the numbers, not fully understanding them, but grasping the overall picture. How did you get this? I have people who specialize in finding information other people want hidden. He took the phone back. If this information became public, say, leaked to the financial press, Victor's company would collapse within days. Investors would pull out, creditors would demand payment. The SEC would start investigating. You're going to destroy his company? I'm going to let his own bad decisions destroy his company. I'm just accelerating the timeline. Dajan's voice was matter-of-fact. He was always going to fail. Men like Victor always do. They build on sand and convince everyone it's bedrock. Eventually, reality catches up. And Celine, what about her? What about her? She was part of this. She humiliated me publicly. She's planning to marry him and take everything I stopped, hearing how petty I sounded. Never mind. No, say it. Dejin leaned forward. What were you going to say? That she's going to get everything I was supposed to have. The life, the status, the money. Even if Victor's company collapses, he'll rebuild. Men like him always do. And she'll be there, reaping the benefits while I gestured at my pregnant belly. A cautionary tale. You think that's how this ends? Isn't it? Dejin was quiet for a moment. Celine Rousseau is 26 years old. She has no money of her own, no career, no skills besides looking beautiful and saying what powerful men want to hear. She's dating Victor because she thinks he's going to make her rich and important. When his company collapses and the money disappears, do you think she'll stay? I hadn't thought about it like that. No, probably not. Definitely not. Women like Celine are transactional. They trade beauty for security. When the security disappears, so do they. He sat back. You're not a cautionary tale, Lena. You're the woman who walked away before the building collapsed. That's not failure. That's survival. The word settled something inside me I hadn't realized was unsettled. Thank you. For what? For not making me feel pathetic for caring about what happens to her. You're human. Humans care about fairness even when it's not logical. He checked his phone. I need to make some calls. There's food in the kitchen if you're hungry. Try to eat something, even if you don't feel like it. He left me alone again. I hauled myself off the couch and wandered into the kitchen, finding the groceries he'd had delivered. Fresh fruit, good bread, cheese, things I hadn't realized I'd been craving until I saw them. I made myself a plate and sat at the island, eating slowly, feeling the baby respond with satisfied movements. He liked the strawberries especially. I pressed my hand against my stomach, feeling him kick. You're going to be okay, I told him quietly. I promise. Whatever it takes, you're going to be safe. My new phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. This is Rachel. I need you to compile a list of everyone who was at the gala last night. Anyone who witnessed the incident or might have additional video footage. Can you do that? I texted back, yes. How many names? As many as you can remember. We're building a witness list. The more people we have who saw what really happened, the harder it is for Victor to control the narrative. I spent the next hour writing down names. Margaret Chen, Harrison Webb, the mayor's chief of staff, society photographers, board members from Victor's company. By the time I finished, I had over 40 names. I sent the list to Rachel, then sat staring at my phone, feeling the weight of what I was doing. These were people I'd had dinner with, served on charity boards with, smiled at across ballrooms. Now I was turning them into witnesses in a legal battle that would destroy whatever remained of my social standing. But maybe that standing had never been real anyway. Maybe it had always been conditional, dependent on my willingness to play the role assigned to me. Dutiful wife, decorative accessory, woman who knew her place. I was done playing that role. Dejin emerged from the study around 9, looking even more tired than before. You should try to sleep. Tomorrow's going to be harder than today. What happens tomorrow? Victor's lawyers will have processed Rachel's filings. They'll respond aggressively, probably try to get a court order for you to return to the marital home. We need to be prepared for that. Can they do that? Force me to go back? They can try. Whether they'll succeed depends on how good their argument is versus how good ours is. He poured himself a glass of water. Rachel's very good. And you? What will you be doing? Making sure certain information reaches the right people at the right time. His tone was carefully neutral. Don't ask me for details. The less you know about my methods, the better for your case. Dejin, I'm not doing anything illegal, he said, anticipating my concern. Just accelerating consequences that were already inevitable. Victor made his choices. He built a house of cards. I'm just introducing a breeze. I should have been bothered by the cold calculation in his voice. Instead, I felt relieved. Someone was finally treating Victor the way he'd been treating everyone else, as a problem to be solved, an obstacle to be removed. Thank you, I said again. Stop thanking me. I can't. You're the only person who's actually helped instead of just watching. Dejin set down his glass and looked at me properly for the first time all day. When you left me 3 years ago, I told myself I'd failed you somehow, that I'd been too much of what I was and not enough of what you needed. I spent a long time trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. I know that now. You were scared of potential danger and ran toward real danger because it looked safer. That wasn't my failure. It was just... He paused, searching for words. Bad luck, bad judgment. Being 23 and thinking you could logic your way out of being afraid. I'm not 23 anymore. No, you're not. He picked up his glass again. Get some sleep, Lena. You're going to need it. I went to bed but couldn't sleep. My mind kept cycling through everything. The gala, Victor's threats, Rachel's warnings, Dae-jin's careful orchestration of my escape. The baby was restless too, shifting and kicking like he could sense my anxiety. Around midnight, my old phone lit up with a call. Victor's name flashed on the screen. I answered it. Lena. His voice was controlled fury. I know you're with Mercer. I know you've hired Rachel Kim. I know what you're trying to do. Good. Then you know I'm serious. You're making a mistake, a huge mistake. Do you have any idea what kind of man Dae-jin Mercer is? What he's capable of? More than you gave me credit for, apparently. He's dangerous, Lena. Violent. He has connections to organizations that... That what? That you can't control? That scare you? I sat up in bed. You're right, he is dangerous. But here's what you don't understand. He's never once made me feel small. He's never humiliated me in public or threatened to take my child away. So yeah, he might be dangerous, but not to me. Victor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had shifted into that familiar patronizing tone. You're upset, emotional. The pregnancy hormones are affecting your judgment. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't you dare blame this on hormones. You plan to divorce me. You plan to take my son. You let your mistress pour champagne on me in front of 200 people and laughed about it. None of that has anything to do with my hormones and everything to do with you being a manipulative, cruel bastard. If you proceed with this divorce, I will destroy you. You already tried that. It didn't work. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers who will make Rachel Kim look like an amateur. I'll drag your name through so much mud you'll never recover. Every society page, every gossip site, every... I don't care. And saying it, I realized it was true. I don't care what those people think anymore. I don't care about the society pages or the charity boards or any of it. I care about my son, and I care about making sure you never have power over me again. You're going to regret this. Maybe, but I'll regret it on my own terms, not yours. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but it felt different from last night's fear shaking. This was adrenaline, anger, power. I'd spent 18 months letting Victor control the narrative of my life. That ended now. There was a soft knock on the door. Lena? Are you all right? I heard voices. I'm fine. I got out of bed and opened the door. Dae-jin stood in the hallway, dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking rumpled and half asleep. Victor called. I answered. What did he say? That he's going to destroy me. That you're dangerous. The usual. Are you okay? I'm better than okay. I meant it. I'm done being afraid of him. Dae-jin studied me for a moment, then nodded. Good. Fear is what he's been counting on. Take that away and he has nothing. That's what I told him. Then you're learning. He started to turn away, then paused. If you need anything, I know. You'll be right there. He smiled slightly. Right. I went back to bed and, surprisingly, fell asleep almost immediately. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through the windows again and I could smell coffee. The baby was moving, doing his morning gymnastics routine. Everything hurt in that familiar pregnant body way, but my mind felt clearer than it had in months. Today, Rachel would face Victor's lawyers in court. Today, the real fight would begin. I was ready. Rachel called at 8 in the morning, her voice clipped and professional. Victor's team filed a motion to compel your return to the marital residence. They're claiming abandonment and asserting that your current living situation poses a risk to the pregnancy. I was sitting at Dae-jin's kitchen island, halfway through a bowl of cut melon. The baby had been active all morning, responding to the fruit with enthusiastic kicks. A risk? I'm safer here than I've been in months. I know that. The judge will know that once we present our evidence. But we need to be in court at 2 o'clock. Can you be ready? Yes. Good. Dress conservatively, nothing flashy. You want to look like a concerned mother, not a vengeful wife." Rachel paused. "Is Dejin planning to attend?" "I don't know. Should he?" "No. His presence would complicate things. Victor's lawyers will try to paint this as an affair, and having your ex-husband in the courtroom plays into that narrative. Better if he stays away." After we hung up, I found Dejin in his study, surrounded by papers and laptop screens. He looked like he hadn't slept much, if at all. "Rachel says I have court at 2, I told him. "She also says you shouldn't come." He nodded without looking up from his screen. "I know. I spoke with her an hour ago." "What are you working on?" "Making sure certain journalists have the information they need for tomorrow's news cycle." He finally glanced up, his expression unreadable. "By this time tomorrow, Victor's company will be front-page news, not the kind of news he wants." "What happens if he figures out it came from you?" "He won't. The information will come from multiple sources, leaked through channels that can't be traced back to me. As far as anyone will know, his own investors got nervous and started talking." Dejin leaned back in his chair. "How are you feeling about court?" "Terrified. Ready. Both. That's the right combination." He stood and walked over to where I stood in the doorway. "Rachel's the best. Trust her. Answer the questions she's prepared you for. Don't volunteer information. And don't let Victor's lawyers provoke you. They'll try to make you emotional, make you look unstable. Don't give them that." "I won't. And Lena?" He reached out like he was going to touch my arm, then stopped himself. "No matter what happens in that courtroom today, you're not going back to him. Understand? Even if the judge rules against us temporarily, we'll appeal. We'll fight every step. But you're not going back to that penthouse." The certainty in his voice steadied something inside me. "Okay, I'll have a car waiting to bring you back here after court. Don't talk to anyone on the way out. Not reporters, not people from Victor's circle. Just get in the car and come home. Home." He'd said it so casually, but the word caught in my chest. This apartment wasn't my home. It was a temporary safe house, a place I was borrowing until I could figure out what came next. Except standing there, watching Dejin look at me with that careful concern he was trying to hide, it felt more like home than anywhere I'd lived in the last 3 years. "I will," I said. At 1:30, a town car arrived to take me to the courthouse. I dressed in one of the outfits Dejin had ordered. A simple navy dress, low heels, minimal jewelry. Rachel had been right about the conservative approach. I needed to look like someone a judge would trust with a child, not someone who was throwing away a marriage out of spite. Rachel met me in the courthouse lobby, immaculate in a charcoal suit. "Victor's already here with his legal team, 3 lawyers plus 2 paralegals. They're putting on a show." "Will that work?" "Not if we stick to the facts." She guided me through security and up to the 3rd floor. "Remember, you're calm, collected, concerned for your safety and the baby's well-being. Nothing more dramatic than that." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, wood-paneled and formal. Victor sat at a table on the left side with his army of lawyers, all of them in expensive suits that screamed money and power. He looked composed, confident, like this was just another business negotiation. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or calculation. Definitely not remorse. I took my seat next to Rachel at the right side table and tried to keep my breathing steady. The baby was moving again, restless. I pressed my hand against my stomach, a gesture I'd started doing without thinking. The judge entered, an older woman with steel gray hair and sharp eyes, and everyone stood. Judge Patricia Morrison, according to the nameplate on her bench. She sat, we sat, and the preliminary hearing began. Victor's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard Ashford, stood first. "Your Honor, we're here today because Mrs. Langford has abandoned the marital residence without cause, taking up residence with her ex-husband, Dejin Mercer. This behavior is not only inappropriate, but potentially dangerous to her unborn child. Mr. Langford is deeply concerned." "Your Honor," Rachel interrupted smoothly, "if I may address these claims immediately, Mrs. Langford did not abandon the marital residence. She fled after receiving explicit threats from her husband regarding custody of their unborn child. We have documentation of these threats." Judge Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Threats?" Rachel pulled out her tablet. "Text messages from Mr. Langford to Mrs. Langford, sent the night she left. I'm submitting these as evidence." She handed papers to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. I watched Judge Morrison read the messages, her expression growing colder with each line. Victor's threats about taking the baby, about making my life difficult, about documenting my erratic behavior, all of it laid out in his own words. Mr. Ashford, Judge Morrison said slowly, your client told his pregnant wife that he would take her child away and destroy her reputation if she didn't comply with his demands. And you're characterizing her departure as abandonment? Ashford didn't miss a beat. Your Honor, those messages were sent in the heat of the moment, after Mrs. Langford made a dramatic exit from a public event. What public event? A charity gala. Mrs. Langford walked out without explanation, causing significant embarrassment to Mr. Langford in front of business associates and colleagues. Rachel stood again. Your Honor, may I present additional evidence regarding that gala? She pulled out her phone and played the video, the real video, the one showing Celine pouring champagne on me while Victor laughed. Then the second video, with Victor and Celine discussing their plans to divorce me and take my son. The courtroom was silent as the videos played. I watched Victor's face go pale, watched his lawyers exchange looks. They hadn't expected this. They'd thought the narrative would stay under their control. Judge Morrison's expression was granite. Mr. Ashford, your client's mistress assaulted his pregnant wife in public, and he's now claiming she abandoned him? Your Honor, the champagne incident was an accident. The second video suggests otherwise. It suggests a premeditated plan to humiliate Mrs. Langford publicly in order to establish grounds for claiming she's mentally unstable. Judge Morrison set down the papers. I'm not inclined to order Mrs. Langford back to a residence where she clearly doesn't feel safe, especially given the threatening nature of these text messages. Victor leaned over and whispered something to Ashford, his face tight with controlled rage. Ashford nodded and stood again. Your Honor, we have concerns about Mrs. Langford's current living situation. She's residing with Dejin Mercer, her ex-husband, a man with known connections to— Careful, Mr. Ashford. Rachel's voice was ice. If you're about to make unfounded accusations about Mr. Mercer, I suggest you have evidence to support them. Otherwise, you're engaging in character assassination to distract from your client's documented misconduct. Mr. Mercer's business dealings are a matter of public record. His legitimate business dealings, yes. Unless you have proof of illegal activity, his reputation is irrelevant to this proceeding. Rachel turned to the judge. Your Honor, Mrs. Langford sought help from someone she trusted when her husband became threatening. The nature of her relationship with Mr. Mercer is that of a concerned ex-spouse providing temporary housing, nothing more. To suggest otherwise is pure speculation designed to damage her credibility. Judge Morrison looked at me directly for the first time. Mrs. Langford, are you in a romantic relationship with your ex-husband? No, Your Honor, I said clearly. He's helping me because I had nowhere else to go, that's all. And you feel safe in his residence? Yes, Your Honor, safer than I've felt in months. What about the baby? Are you receiving proper prenatal care? Yes, Your Honor, I have an appointment with my obstetrician next week. Judge Morrison nodded slowly, then turned back to the lawyers. Here's my ruling. Mrs. Langford is not required to return to the marital residence at this time. However, I'm ordering both parties to maintain separate residence pending further hearings on the divorce and custody matters. Mr. Langford, you are not to contact Mrs. Langford except through legal counsel. Mrs. Langford, you are to provide this court with documentation of your prenatal care and living situation within 2 weeks. Your Honor, Ashford tried again, we believe Mrs. Langford's current situation— I've made my ruling, Mr. Ashford. Unless you have new evidence to present, we're done here. Judge Morrison's tone left no room for argument. We'll reconvene in 3 weeks for a full hearing on the divorce petition and preliminary custody arrangements. Until then, both parties are to conduct themselves appropriately and put the well-being of their unborn child first. She banged her gavel, and it was over. Rachel gathered her papers efficiently while I sat there, trying to process what had just happened. We'd won. Not the whole case, but this battle. Victor couldn't force me back. Couldn't contact me. Couldn't control me the way he'd been controlling me for 18 months. Across the aisle, Victor was standing, his face a mask of barely contained fury. He caught my eye, and the look he gave me was pure venom. This wasn't over for him, not by a long shot. Rachel touched my arm. Come on. Let's go before his lawyers try to corner us in the hallway. We made it out of the courtroom and down the hallway toward the elevators. Behind us, I could hear Ashford's voice raised in conversation with the other lawyers, could feel Victor's eyes on my back. The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside, and I finally let myself exhale. That went well, Rachel said. It did? Better than I expected. Judge Morrison clearly didn't appreciate Victor's tactics, and having those videos was crucial. It established a pattern of premeditated cruelty that's very hard for him to explain away. She checked her phone. I need to file some follow-up paperwork, but you did great in there. Calm, credible, sympathetic, exactly what we needed. The car was waiting when we exited the courthouse, just like Dae-jin had promised. I climbed in gratefully, exhausted from the adrenaline crash. My phone buzzed, the new one Dae-jin had given me. A text from him. How did it go? We won. Judge ruled I don't have to go back. Good. Are you on your way here? Yes. Be there in 20 minutes. I closed my eyes and leaned my head back against the seat. The baby was finally quiet, maybe worn out from all the stress hormones I'd been flooding him with. I pressed my hand against my stomach again, feeling the solid weight of him. We did it, I whispered. First step. When I got back to the apartment, Dae-jin was waiting. He took one look at my face and said, Sit down, I'll make tea. I collapsed on the couch while he moved around the kitchen with familiar efficiency. The tea appeared a few minutes later, some kind of herbal blend that smelled like chamomile and mint. Tell me what happened, he said. I walked him through the hearing, Rachel's presentation of evidence, Victor's lawyer's attempts to control the narrative, Judge Morrison's clear displeasure with Victor's behavior. Dae-jin listened without interrupting, his expression growing progressively more satisfied. So he can't contact you at all? Not directly, only through lawyers. Good. He pulled out his phone. Then he's going to have a very frustrating evening. What do you mean? The financial press just published their first story about his company, questions about accounting irregularities, investor concerns, possible SEC investigation. By midnight, it'll be everywhere. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. What will he do? Scramble. Try to reassure investors, call in favors, but it won't matter. Once the perception shifts from successful tech mogul to possible fraud, it's almost impossible to recover. Investors don't care about truth. They care about risk. And right now, Victor represents risk. And Celine? Will probably start distancing herself very soon. Her family's not going to want her associated with a scandal. Dae-jin set his phone aside. You should eat something. You look exhausted. I'm exhausted. Then eat, then rest. Tomorrow will be easier. But tomorrow wasn't easier. Tomorrow was when everything accelerated. I woke to my phone buzzing with notifications. Not the old phone, the new one, which meant something important. I grabbed it and saw a dozen messages from Rachel. Turn on the news. Victor's company stock dropped 40% in pre-market trading. Major investors are pulling out. His lawyers are trying to delay the divorce proceedings. Don't respond to anything without talking to me. First, I stumbled out to the living room and found Dae-jin already awake, watching a financial news channel. Victor's face filled the screen, looking haggard and defensive as he fielded questions from a reporter. Absolutely deny any wrongdoing, Victor was saying. These allegations are completely unfounded. My company has always maintained the highest ethical standards. But Mr. Langford, 3 of your major investors have released statements saying they were misled about the company's financial health. How do you respond to that? I respond by saying that business involves risk, and sometimes people get nervous when, are you suggesting your investors are overreacting? Victor's expression tightened. I'm suggesting that rumors and speculation can do significant damage to a company's value, regardless of the underlying truth. The reporter pressed harder. There are also questions about your personal life. Your wife filed for divorce this week amid allegations of, my personal life is not relevant to my company's operations. But you're facing accusations of threatening behavior toward your pregnant wife. Does that speak to questions about your judgment? Victor ripped off his microphone and walked away from the camera. The feed cut back to the studio, where the anchors discussed the dramatic exit and what it meant for investor confidence. He's unraveling, Dae-jin said quietly. Faster than I expected. What happens now? Now? His board will probably force him out, try to install new leadership to calm investors. But the damage is done. The company was already on shaky ground. This just accelerated the inevitable. My phone rang. Rachel. "Did you see the news?" she asked without preamble. "I'm watching it now. Victor's lawyers just requested an emergency delay of all proceedings. They're claiming he needs time to address the business crisis, and that forcing him to deal with the divorce simultaneously constitutes undue hardship. Will the judge agree? Unlikely, but they'll try. I'm filing a response arguing that Victor's business problems are separate from his obligation to resolve custody and support issues." She paused. "Lena, this is going to get very messy very quickly. Victor is losing control of everything, his company, his reputation, his marriage. Men like him don't handle that well." "Meaning?" "Meaning be careful. Stay where you are. Don't go anywhere alone. And if you see or hear anything that makes you uncomfortable, call me immediately." After we hung up, I looked at Dejin. "Rachel says Victor's going to get desperate." Rachel's right. He stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city. When powerful men fall, they flail, try to drag down everyone around them. Victor's already lost his company and his wife. The only thing he has left is pride, and pride makes people stupid. You sound like you're speaking from experience. I've seen it happen. Men who build empires on ego can't survive when the ego gets punctured. He turned back to face me. Victor will probably try one more power play, something dramatic, designed to reassert control. We need to be ready for it. What kind of power play? I don't know yet, but when it comes, it'll be obvious. It came 3 days later. I was in the apartment working my way through another bowl of fruit when my old phone lit up with a call. Margaret Chen's name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Rachel had told me not to talk to anyone from Victor's circle, but curiosity won out. "Hello?" "Lena." Margaret's voice was strained. "I need to warn you about something. Victor's planning something. I don't know what exactly, but I heard him on the phone with his lawyers yesterday. He was talking about custody, about proving you're unfit, about—" She stopped. "I shouldn't be calling you. If he finds out, if anyone finds out—" "Margaret, what did you hear?" "He's going to try to take the baby, right after birth. He has lawyers ready to file emergency custody papers the moment you go into labor. They'll claim you're in an unsafe environment, that you're associating with criminals, that you're mentally unstable. And Lena?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He has a judge. Someone he's paid off or has leverage over. He's confident he'll win." Ice flooded my veins. "When is he planning this?" "I don't know. Soon. He knows he's running out of time. The company's collapsing. People are turning against him. The baby is the only leverage he has left." Margaret paused. "I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. Should have stopped him at the gala. But I was scared, and I'm still scared, but I couldn't let him do this without warning you." "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you for telling me." After she hung up, I sat frozen on the couch, trying to process. Victor had a plan. Victor had a judge. Victor was going to try to take my son the moment he was born. I called Rachel immediately. "I need to change hospitals," I said without preamble. "Victor's planning to take the baby right after birth. He has a judge lined up." Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Who told you this?" "Someone who overheard him. Someone I trust." "Okay. Okay, don't panic. We can handle this. I'll file a motion to prevent him from being notified when you go into labor. We'll also need to alert hospital security. Get a restraining order expanded to include the delivery room." She was thinking out loud, making a plan. "Where are you now?" "Dejin's apartment." "Stay there. I'm coming over. We need to strategize." I found Dejin in his study and told him everything Margaret had said. His expression went cold and hard in a way I hadn't seen before. "He's not taking your son," Dejin said quietly. "I don't care what judge he's paid off or what lawyers he's hired. It's not happening." "How can you stop it?" "By making sure he's occupied with bigger problems when you go into labor." He pulled out his phone and made a call, switching to Korean mid-conversation. I caught snippets, words that sounded official, urgent. When he hung up, he looked at me. "How far along are you?" 6.5 months. About 10 weeks to go, give or take. "Good. That gives us time." He made another call, this one in English. "I need a private medical team. Obstetrician, pediatrician, delivery room staff. Discreet, experienced, willing to work off-site. Can you arrange it? My breath caught. Off-site? He nodded. If Victor has someone in the hospital system, we can't risk a traditional delivery. We'll bring the hospital to you. Is that even possible? Anything's possible with enough money and the right contacts. He was already typing on his phone. I'll have medical equipment brought in, set up a delivery room here. When you go into labor, you'll have everything you need without leaving this building. Victor won't know until it's over. Rachel arrived an hour later and, after initial skepticism, agreed that a private delivery was the safest option. It's irregular, she said, but not illegal. As long as you have licensed medical professionals attending, the birth certificate will be just as valid as a hospital birth. And Victor? I asked. Victor will get the notification after the fact. By the time he mobilizes his lawyers and his bought judge, the baby will already be born. You'll already be listed as the primary parent on all documentation, and any attempt to remove the child will look like exactly what it is, kidnapping. Rachel's smile was sharp. We're taking away his element of surprise. Over the next week, Daejin's apartment transformed. The guest room became a medical suite, complete with hospital bed, monitoring equipment, and enough supplies to handle any complication. A team of doctors came through to assess the setup and meet me. Dr. Sarah Chen, an obstetrician who'd delivered over 1,000 babies, and Dr. James Park, a pediatrician who specialized in high-risk births. You'll be safer here than in most hospitals, Dr. Chen assured me after her evaluation. We have everything we need, and without the chaos of a busy maternity ward, we can focus entirely on you. Victor, meanwhile, was drowning. His company had officially filed for bankruptcy protection. The board had voted him out as CEO. Celine had stopped appearing with him in public. According to Rachel's sources, she'd moved out of his penthouse and was dating a hedge fund manager now. Everything Daejin had predicted was coming true. Victor's empire was collapsing, and he was powerless to stop it. But that made him more dangerous, not less. One night, about 8 weeks from my due date, I woke to the sound of shouting from outside the building. I got up and found Daejin already at the window, his phone to his ear. What's happening? Victor's outside. Building security stopped him at the entrance. Daejin's voice was calm, but his jaw was tight. He's demanding to see you. Can he get in? No, the building's locked down, but he's making a scene. He listened to whoever was on the phone, then said, Keep him contained. I'm calling NYPD. Within minutes, police arrived. I watched from the window as they spoke with Victor, who was gesturing wildly, clearly drunk or close to it. Eventually, they escorted him to a patrol car. Not under arrest, it looked like, but definitely removed from the premises. Daejin hung up and turned to me. That'll be a violation of the restraining order. Rachel will have documentation by morning. He's falling apart. Yes. Daejin's expression was unreadable. And that's when he's most dangerous. The man has nothing left to lose except his pride, and he's going to make one more attempt to salvage that. What do we do? We wait, we stay alert, and we make sure you and the baby are protected. He was right. Victor's final move came 2 weeks later, not with lawyers or judges, but with the press. A tabloid ran a story, Tech Mogul's wife hiding with gangster ex-husband. The article was full of speculation about Daejin's rumored criminal connections and suggested I'd been having an affair throughout my marriage to Victor. There were photos of me entering Daejin's building, grainy and unflattering, accompanied by breathless prose about scandal and betrayal. I read it on my phone, feeling sick. This is going to ruin everything. No, Rachel said when I called her. This is actually going to help us. How? Because it's demonstrably false. We can prove you weren't having an affair. We can prove you sought refuge with Daejin only after Victor threatened you. And we can prove that Victor fed this story to the tabloid as retaliation. It makes him look desperate and vindictive. She sounded almost cheerful. This is the death rattle of a man who knows he's lost. Let him have it. She was right again. The story made waves for about 48 hours before other news cycles overtook it. A few people from my old social circle reached out, some supportive, some clearly fishing for gossip. I ignored them all. Victor had taken his shot, and it had failed. 3 weeks before my due date, I had my final appointment with Dr. Chen. Everything looked good. The baby was healthy, positioned correctly, measuring right on schedule. I was measuring a little large, but that was normal for a first pregnancy. You could go early, Dr. Chen warned. Probably not more than a week or two, but be prepared. Make sure you're never alone, make sure you have your go bag ready, and call me the moment you feel anything unusual. I promised I would. That night, Daejin and I had dinner together, something we'd started doing regularly. Not formal meals, just simple food and quiet conversation. It felt normal in a way nothing had felt normal in years. Thank you, I said over pasta. For all of this. I know I keep saying it, but I don't know how else to. You don't have to thank me, Lena. Yes, I do. You turned your entire life upside down for me. Your apartment, your time, your resources. You didn't have to do any of it. Daejin set down his fork. When you left 3 years ago, I told myself I'd let you go. That if you wanted freedom from me, from the life I led, then I'd give you that. But I never stopped caring, never stopped making sure you were safe, even from a distance. So when you called, when you needed help, there was no question. There was only ever going to be yes. The words hung between us, heavy with everything we weren't saying, everything we'd been carefully not addressing for the past 2 months. I made a mistake, I said quietly. When I left you, I thought I was choosing safety, but I was just choosing a different kind of danger, a more respectable kind. You were young. You did what made sense at the time. I hurt you. Yes, he didn't deny it. But you were also right about some things. I was too controlling, too convinced I knew what was best. I didn't give you enough space to figure things out yourself. And now? Now I'm trying to do better, trying to help without smothering, trying to protect without controlling. He smiled slightly. It's harder than it sounds. You're doing fine. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. Afterward, Daejin went back to his study, and I went to bed, my mind full of thoughts I couldn't quite organize. The baby kicked, hard, right against my ribs. I pressed my hand there, feeling him move. Soon, very soon he'd be here, and everything would change again. I just had to make it through the next few weeks without Victor finding a way to take him from me. I had to believe that would be enough. Labor started at 3 in the morning, 2 weeks before my due date. I woke to a sharp pain low in my back and lay there for a moment, trying to decide if this was real or just another false alarm. Then another contraction hit, stronger this time, and I knew. I got out of bed carefully and made my way to Daejin's room. His door was open. It always was now, ever since Victor's late-night appearance outside the building. I knocked softly on the doorframe. Daejin? He was awake immediately, sitting up in bed. What's wrong? I think it's time. He was on his feet and reaching for his phone before I finished the sentence. How far apart are the contractions? I don't know, I just woke up. Okay, sit down. I'm calling Dr. Chen. He guided me to the chair by his window while he dialed. Sarah? It's Daejin. Lena's in labor. How soon can you be here? I could hear Dr. Chen's tinny voice through the phone, calm and professional. Daejin listened, asked questions, then hung up. She'll be here in 30 minutes. Dr. Park is on his way too. How are you feeling? Scared, I admitted, and like I need to pee. Again. That's normal. Go. I'll get the room ready. By the time I came out of the bathroom, the apartment was transforming. Daejin had turned on all the lights in the guest room, now fully equipped as a delivery suite. He was moving with focused efficiency, checking equipment, setting out supplies, doing all the things I assumed he'd been trained to do by Dr. Chen over the past few weeks. Another contraction hit, and I had to brace myself against the wall. Daejin was there immediately, his hand on my back. Breathe through it, he said quietly. You're doing fine. This is going to get worse, isn't it? Probably, but you're stronger than you think. Dr. Chen arrived 23 minutes later, followed shortly by Dr. Park and 2 nurses. They swept into the apartment with practiced calm, transforming the space into something that felt more like a hospital and less like someone's guest room. Dr. Chen examined me while everyone else set up monitoring equipment. You're at 4 centimeters, she announced. Still early, but progressing well. First babies can take a while, so get comfortable. This might be a long day. It was. Labor, it turned out, was nothing like the movies made it seem. It was slower, messier, more exhausting than I'd imagined. Hours blurred together in a haze of contractions and breathing exercises and the constant monitoring of machines. Daejin stayed the entire time. He sat in the corner when I wanted space, held my hand when I needed someone to squeeze, brought me ice chips, and spoke to me in Korean when the pain got bad enough that English felt like too much effort. "What are you saying?" I asked during one of the calmer moments. "That you're doing well. That your son is going to be strong and healthy. That you're the bravest person I know." "I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm being torn apart. Bravery isn't feeling unafraid. It's doing the hard thing anyway." Around noon, Dr. Chen checked me again. 7 centimeters. You're getting close." "How close?" "A few more hours, probably. Your body's doing exactly what it should." A few more hours felt like an eternity. The contractions were coming faster now, harder, each one cresting like a wave that threatened to pull me under. I lost track of time, of everything except the rhythm of pain and breath, and the knowledge that somewhere at the end of this, there would be a baby. My son. My boy. The one Victor had threatened to take, the one I'd been fighting to protect before he was even born. "I can't do this," I said at some point, the words coming out as a gasp between contractions. "Yes, you can." Dejin's voice was steady, certain. "You've already survived everything else. You can survive this." "What if something goes wrong?" "Nothing's going wrong. Dr. Chen says everything's perfect. You just have to keep going." "What if Victor shows up?" "He won't. Building security has instructions. He can't get anywhere near this apartment." "What if he finds out after? What if he still tries to take Lena?" Dejin moved closer, his hand finding mine. "Listen to me. Victor has lost everything, his company, his reputation, his power. The only thing he has left is a pending criminal investigation for financial fraud. He's not in a position to take anyone's child. Rachel's already filed all the paperwork. The moment this baby is born, you're listed as the sole legal guardian until the custody hearing. And at that hearing, with everything we have documented, there's no judge, corrupt or otherwise, who's going to side with him." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." Another contraction hit, stronger than the others. I heard myself make a sound I didn't recognize, something between a groan and a scream. "That's it," Dr. Chen said, moving into position. "You're ready. Next contraction, I need you to push." The next hour was a blur of pain and effort and voices telling me what to do. Push. Breathe. Rest. Push again. My entire world narrowed to this single task, this one impossible thing my body was trying to do. And then suddenly there was crying. Not my crying, though I was crying too, but a baby's cry, high and indignant and absolutely perfect. "It's a boy," Dr. Chen announced, holding up a small red squirming bundle. "Healthy lungs, good color. Congratulations, Lena." They placed him on my chest, this tiny person I'd been carrying for 9 months, and everything else fell away. He was real. Solid. Mine. His eyes were squeezed shut against the bright lights, his little fists waving in protest at being suddenly ejected from his warm, dark home. "Hi," I whispered, touching his head with trembling fingers. "Hi, baby. I'm your mom." He stopped crying at the sound of my voice, his face turning toward me like he recognized it. Maybe he did. Maybe he'd been listening all along. I looked up and found Dejin standing a few feet away, his expression unguarded for once. He looked like he was watching something precious and fragile, something he wanted to protect but didn't know if he was allowed to touch. "Do you want to hold him?" I asked. "I'm not—" He stopped. "He's not mine to hold. He's a baby. He doesn't care about biology. Come here." Dejin approached slowly, like he was afraid of breaking something. Dr. Chen helped transfer the baby from my arms to his, showing him how to support the head, how to keep him secure. The baby settled immediately against Dejin's chest, making small snuffling sounds. Dejin looked down at him with an expression I'd never seen before, wonder maybe, or something close to it. "He's so small," Dejin said quietly. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, one of the nurses announced. "Actually, pretty average." "What are you going to name him?" Dr. Chen asked, filling out paperwork. I'd been avoiding this question for weeks. Victor had wanted Victor Jr., his father's name, a family legacy. But this baby wasn't going to carry Victor's legacy. He was going to have his own. "James," I said, surprising myself. "James Hartwell. My father's name, my family's name, a fresh start. James Hartwell," Dr. Chen repeated, writing it down. Beautiful name. The next few hours passed in a haze of exhaustion and paperwork and medical checks. James was weighed, measured, tested, and declared perfectly healthy. I was stitched up, given pain medication, and moved to a regular bed while the medical team efficiently broke down the delivery equipment. By evening, the apartment was quiet again. The doctors and nurses had left, promising to return tomorrow for follow-up checks. James was asleep in a bassinet next to my bed, wrapped in a soft blue blanket. I couldn't stop looking at him, couldn't quite believe he was real. Dejin appeared in the doorway with tea. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck. A wonderful, beautiful truck." I accepted the tea gratefully. "Thank you for everything, for making this possible. You did all the hard work." "You know what I mean." He sat down in the chair next to the bed, the same chair he'd occupied during labor. "Rachel called while you were sleeping. She's filing the birth certificate tomorrow. Once that's official, she'll notify Victor's lawyers. They'll have 48 hours to respond if they want to contest custody, but given Victor's current legal situation, she doesn't think they will. And if they do, then we go to court and present all our evidence. The videos, the texts, the witnesses from the gala, Victor's financial crimes, the restraining order violations, everything." Dejin's voice was calm, certain. "You're going to win, Lena. There's no version of this where you don't." I wanted to believe him. Mostly, I did. But there was still that small, scared part of me that remembered Victor's threats, his confidence, the way he'd controlled everything for so long. What if he tries something anyway? What if he shows up here? Or he won't. And if he does, security will handle it. You're safe here. James is safe here. Dejin leaned forward. "I need you to understand something. The Victor Langford you married doesn't exist anymore. His company is gone. His reputation is destroyed. He's facing criminal charges. The people who used to fear him now avoid him. He has no power left, Lena. Not over you, not over anyone." How did it happen so fast? It didn't. It was always going to happen. Men like Victor build their power on lies, and lies collapse eventually. I just helped the collapse happen faster. James made a small sound in his sleep, and we both turned to look at him. His little face was peaceful, unaware of all the chaos that had surrounded his arrival into the world. "He deserves better than to grow up in the shadow of all this," I said quietly. "The divorce, the scandal, the fighting. He won't grow up in the shadow. He'll grow up knowing his mother fought for him. That's not shadow, that's light." The words settled something inside me. Dejin was right. James wouldn't remember the gala or the champagne or Victor's threats. He would only know what I chose to tell him, what I chose to make of this situation. And I chose to make it a story about strength, not victimhood, about fighting back, not giving in, about learning the difference between safety and control, between protection and possession. Over the next few days, life settled into a new rhythm. James needed constant attention, feeding, changing, soothing when he cried for reasons I couldn't always decipher. Dr. Chen came by twice to check on both of us, declaring us healthy and healing well. Rachel filed all the necessary paperwork and kept me updated on Victor's increasingly desperate legal maneuvers, none of which went anywhere. Victor's lawyers tried to argue that I'd kidnapped James by not delivering him in a hospital where Victor could be notified. Judge Morrison threw that out immediately. They tried to argue that Dejin's home was an inappropriate environment for a newborn. Rachel presented documentation of the private medical team and professional setup. They tried to argue that I was mentally unstable and needed psychiatric evaluation. Rachel presented the videos of Victor's cruelty and the testimony of witnesses from the gala. Every argument failed. Every motion was denied. Victor was losing, and everyone could see it. The final hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after James's birth. Rachel came to the apartment the night before to prep me. "Tomorrow's mostly a formality," she said, reviewing her notes. "The judge has already seen all our evidence. Victor's lawyers know they're losing. They'll probably try one last dramatic gesture, but it won't matter. You're going to walk out of that courtroom with full custody and a divorce decree." "What about child support?" "We'll negotiate that separately. Given Victor's financial situation, don't expect much. But honestly, I don't think you want his money anyway." She was right. I didn't. Taking Victor's money would mean staying tied to him, giving him a reason to stay involved in James's life. Better to make a clean break, start fresh without any strings attached. That night, I couldn't sleep. James was finally down after an hour of fussing, and the apartment was quiet. I found myself standing at the window, looking out over the city lights, thinking about everything that had happened. 4 months ago, I'd been standing in a ballroom with champagne dripping from my hair, convinced my life was over. Now I was standing in a safe apartment with a healthy baby sleeping in the next room, about to finalize a divorce that would give me freedom and security. The journey between those two moments had been brutal, terrifying, exhausting, but somewhere along the way I'd stopped being the woman who let things happen to her and become the woman who made things happen. Can't sleep? I turned to find Daejin in the hallway, dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt. He looked rumpled, human, less like the controlled figure who'd orchestrated Victor's downfall, and more like just a man who'd been woken by a crying baby. "Too much on my mind," I said. He joined me at the window. "Tomorrow will go fine. Rachel's prepared for every possible scenario." "I know it's not that." I paused, trying to find the right words. I was just thinking about how much has changed, how different everything is now. Different better or different worse? Better. Definitely better, but also harder. Being free isn't as simple as I thought it would be. Daejin was quiet for a moment. Freedom is never simple. It means making your own choices, which means living with your own consequences. That's harder than letting someone else make the choices for you. Is that why you've been so careful? Not pushing, not deciding things for me? Yes. He turned to look at me. 3 years ago, you left because I didn't give you enough space to make your own decisions. I thought I was protecting you, but I was really just controlling you in a different way than Victor did. I didn't want to make that mistake again. You weren't like Victor. No, but I wasn't right either. He leaned against the window frame. Love isn't supposed to be a cage, even if the cage is comfortable. It's supposed to be support for someone to build their own life, not a replacement for having a life. The word love hung in the air between us, unacknowledged but impossible to ignore. We hadn't talked about what existed between us now, what had always existed. We'd been too focused on survival, on getting through each day, on protecting James. "What happens after tomorrow?" I asked quietly. "After the custody hearing? What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. I need to find my own place eventually, figure out how to support myself and James, build a life that's actually mine. You can stay here as long as you need." "I know, but I can't stay forever. That wouldn't be fair to you." "What if I wanted you to stay?" My breath caught. "Daejin, I'm not asking you to come back to me," he said quickly. "I'm not asking for anything. I'm just saying that this apartment is big enough for 2 adults and a baby. You're safe here. James is safe here. If you need time to figure things out without the pressure of finding a new place immediately, you have that time. That's a lot to offer someone who walked out on you 3 years ago. You had your reasons. They made sense to you at the time. I've made peace with that." He straightened up. "But Lena, I want to be clear about something. I'm not doing this because I think you owe me. I'm not keeping score, waiting for you to fall back into my arms out of gratitude. I'm doing this because I care about you and I care about James's well-being. That's all." What if I wanted it to be more than that? The question surprised both of us. I hadn't meant to ask it, hadn't even known I was thinking it until the words came out. Daejin looked at me carefully. "Do you?" "I don't know. Maybe. Eventually." I pressed my hands against the window glass, feeling the cool surface. "I spent 3 years running from you because I thought you were dangerous. Then I spent 18 months trapped with Victor because I thought he was safe. I don't trust my own judgment anymore. I don't know if what I feel is real or just gratitude or trauma bonding or all of those things can be true at once." Daejin interrupted gently. "You can be grateful and also have real feelings. You can be processing trauma and also know what you want. Human emotions aren't that clean and separate. So what do I do?" "You take your time. You figure out who you are when you're not running or trapped. You raise your son. And if somewhere in all of that you decide you want something more with me, I'll be here. And if you decide you don't, I'll still be here as a friend. Either way, you're not alone." James chose that moment to start crying from the bedroom. We both smiled, the tension breaking. "I'll get him," I said. "I'll make a bottle." We moved through the apartment in comfortable synchronicity, handling the midnight feeding with the practiced efficiency we'd developed over the past 2 weeks. James ate hungrily, his small hands curled into fists against the bottle. When he was done, Dae-jin took him and walked him around the living room, bouncing slightly to keep him calm. "You're good with him," I observed. "He's easy to be good with. All he wants is food, sleep, and someone to hold him. If only adults were that simple." "Would you want kids? Your own kids, I mean?" Dae-jin looked down at James, considering the question. "I always thought I would." "Then you left, and I stopped thinking about it. Seemed pointless to plan a family when I couldn't even keep a marriage together." "That wasn't your fault. It wasn't yours either. We were both young, both making the best decisions we could with what we knew." He settled James back into the bassinet, tucking the blanket around him carefully. "Maybe someday, if the right situation came along." We stood there together watching James sleep, and I felt something settle in my chest. Not resolution exactly, not certainty, but a sense that maybe, eventually, things would work out. That I had time to figure out what I wanted, who I wanted to be, how I wanted to build my life. The custody hearing the next morning was anticlimactic. Victor showed up looking haggard and defeated, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that had lost weight. Celine was nowhere to be seen. His legal team had shrunk to just one lawyer, a tired-looking woman who went through the motions without conviction. Rachel presented our case efficiently. The videos, the texts, the witness statements, the evidence of Victor's financial crimes and threatening behavior. Judge Morrison listened with the same sharp attention she'd shown at the preliminary hearing, occasionally making notes. When it was Victor's lawyer's turn, she stood and said, "Your Honor, in light of the evidence presented and my client's current circumstances, we're not contesting the custody arrangement. Mr. Langford requests visitation rights to be determined at a later date, once his legal situation is resolved." It was over. Just like that. No dramatic confrontation, no last-minute revelation, just a judge signing papers and declaring that James Hartwell would remain in his mother's custody, that the marriage between Victor Langford and Lena Hartwell was dissolved, that both parties were free to resume their separate lives. Victor caught my eye as we left the courtroom. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked empty, hollowed out, like someone who'd finally run out of moves and didn't know what to do next. I felt nothing looking at him. No triumph, no pity, no residual anger. Just a distant acknowledgement that this person had once been important to my life and now wasn't. Outside the courthouse, Rachel pulled me aside. "That's it. You're free. The divorce is final, custody is settled, and unless Victor appeals, which I seriously doubt he will, you're done with him. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being a good client. Too many people in your situation cave to pressure or accept bad settlements because they're tired of fighting. You didn't. You should be proud of that." I was proud, exhausted, overwhelmed, uncertain about the future, but proud. Dae-jin was waiting in the car with James, who'd slept through the entire proceeding. I climbed in, and Dae-jin handed me the baby without comment. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Free," I said, and meant it. The next few months were about rebuilding. I enrolled in online classes to finish the degree I'd abandoned when I married Victor. I started therapy to process everything that had happened. I spent long hours with James, learning his personality, figuring out what made him laugh and what made him fussy. Dae-jin kept his distance emotionally while remaining present practically. He worked from home most days, so I wouldn't be alone with James. He helped with midnight feedings and diaper changes without being asked. He created space for me to heal without making me feel like I had to perform gratitude or recovery on any particular timeline. Slowly, carefully, I started to figure out who I was. Not Victor's wife, not Dae-jin's ex-wife, not even James's mother, though that was a huge part of my identity now. Just Lena, a woman in her late 20s trying to build a life on her own terms. 6 months after James was born, I was feeding him breakfast when Dae-jin came into the kitchen with his laptop. "I found you an apartment," he said without preamble. My stomach clenched. "Oh? 2-bedroom, good neighborhood, near a park. It's in one of my buildings, so I can give you a favorable lease, but it's completely separate from this apartment. Your own space." He turned the laptop so I could see the listing. "I thought you might want to look at it." The apartment was beautiful, bright, spacious, with big windows and hardwood floors. Exactly the kind of place I'd imagine living in someday. "It's perfect," I said slowly. "But I'm not sure I'm ready to—" "You don't have to decide now. The unit's empty. It'll be there when you're ready." He closed the laptop. "I just wanted you to know it's an option, so you're not staying here because you feel trapped." "I don't feel trapped. Good, but you should have the choice anyway. That night, after James was asleep, I found Dejin in his study. Can I ask you something? Always. What do you want? From me? From this situation? What do you actually want? He set down his pen and looked at me. I want you to be happy. I want James to be safe and healthy. I want you to have the freedom to build whatever life you want, whether that includes me or not. That's not a real answer. Yes, it is. No, it's what you think I need to hear. I'm asking what you want, selfishly. If you could have anything, what would it be? Dejin was quiet for a long moment. I'd want what we had before, but better. I'd want you to choose me, not because you're scared or trapped or grateful, but because you want to. I'd want to help raise James, watch him grow up, be part of your life in a real way. But Lena, wanting those things doesn't mean I'm entitled to them. You don't owe me anything. What if I wanted them too? Do you? I thought about the last 6 months, the safety I'd felt here, the way Dejin had supported without smothering, helped without controlling, the way he was with James, patient and gentle and completely lacking in the possessive entitlement Victor had shown, the way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't watching, like I was something precious he was afraid to break. I think I might, I said carefully, but I need to be sure. I need to know it's real, and not just because you saved me. Take whatever time you need. What if it takes years? Then it takes years. You'd really wait that long? Lena, I waited 3 years hoping you'd realize you'd made a mistake. I can wait however long it takes for you to be sure you're not making another one. I crossed the room and did something I hadn't done since that first night in the sedan. I touched him deliberately, my hand covering his on the desk. I'm not making a mistake. I don't think I am anyway, but I need to figure out who I am separately before I can figure out who I am with you. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. So I'm going to take that apartment, try living on my own with James, see what that feels like. But I'm not... I paused, searching for the right words. I'm not leaving, not like before. I'm just giving us both space to make sure this is real. Dejin turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through mine. I can work with space. I moved into the new apartment a month later. It was strange at first being truly alone with James, responsible for everything without Dejin's quiet presence in the background. But it was also freeing. I decorated the way I wanted, set my own schedule, made my own decisions about everything from what to have for dinner to when to put James to bed. Dejin visited twice a week, helping with James and taking me out for coffee, while someone from his staff watched the baby. We talked about everything and nothing, my classes, his work, James's newest developmental milestone. We were building something new, something that wasn't based on the fear and youth of our first marriage or the crisis and desperation of our reunion. A year after the divorce was finalized, Victor's criminal trial concluded. He was sentenced to 5 years for fraud and embezzlement. The news barely registered with me. He felt like someone from another life, someone I'd read about rather than married. James was walking now, babbling in that pre-language way toddlers do. He had my blonde hair and Victor's dark eyes, but his personality was all his own, curious, determined, quick to laugh. He called me Mama and called Dejin something that sounded like Jin Jin, which made Dejin smile every time. Do you ever regret it? I asked Dejin one evening. We were in my apartment, watching James play with blocks on the living room floor, taking me in, upending your life for someone who left you. No, he said simply. Do you regret calling me that night? No, but I regret that I had to. I regret that I didn't figure things out sooner, didn't see Victor for what he was, didn't... Lena. He cut me off gently. You can't regret the path that got you here. Maybe you made mistakes. Maybe you chose badly, but you also got James out of it, and you got yourself out before it was too late. That's not something to regret. He was right. James was the best thing that had come out of my marriage to Victor, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. I'm ready, I said suddenly. For what? To stop taking space. To try again. With you. If you still want that. Dejin set down his coffee cup carefully. You're sure? As sure as I can be about anything. I know who I am now. I know what I want. And I want this. You. Us. The messy, complicated, probably still going to make mistakes version of us. That sounds perfect. It wasn't perfect, of course. Nothing ever is. We had arguments about parenting styles and household logistics and how much time Daejin spent working. I had moments of panic where I worried I was making another mistake, choosing the wrong person again. He had moments of frustration when I pulled away out of old habits and fear. But we worked through it. We talked instead of running. We chose each other deliberately and consciously every single day. 2 years after that night in the sedan, Daejin and I got married again. It was small, just us, James, Rachel, and a handful of close friends. No society people, no gala, no performance. Just two people who'd learned the hard way what really mattered, making a promise to each other in front of the people who'd helped them survive. James was the ring bearer, proud and serious in his tiny suit. He took the job very seriously, walking carefully down the makeshift aisle in our living room. "Do you think we'll mess this up?" I whispered to Daejin while the officiant set up. "Probably, but we'll mess it up together this time, and that makes all the difference." He was right. The difference between my marriages to Victor and Daejin wasn't perfection versus disaster. It was control versus partnership. It was possession versus respect. It was someone who wanted me as a trophy versus someone who wanted me as a person. I'd learned through champagne and humiliation and fear and fighting that safety doesn't come from respectability or social standing or marrying someone everyone approves of. Safety comes from knowing that the person you're with sees you as a whole human being, not a possession to manage or a problem to solve. James pulled on my dress. "Mama, time?" "Yes, baby, it's time." I took Daejin's hand, and we promised each other everything we'd been too young to promise the first time. Not perfection, not a fairy tale, just partnership, honesty, and the willingness to choose each other even when it was hard. Later that night, after James was asleep and the last guest had left, I stood at the window looking out at the city lights. Daejin came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I'm glad it happened the way it did. All of it. Even the bad parts. Even Victor?" "Even Victor. Because that situation taught me what I actually needed. Not safety from danger, just partnership with someone who respects me enough to let me be dangerous on my own terms." Daejin laughed. "You're dangerous?" "Incredibly. I divorced 2 men and dismantled a tech empire. I'm terrifying." "Yes, you are." He kissed the top of my head. "What do you want to do with all that power?" "Change the world, raise my son, love you, in no particular order." "That sounds like a good plan." It was a good plan. Not perfect. Not without challenges. But mine. Built on my choices, my strength, my willingness to fight for what I deserved rather than settle for what was offered. Standing there in the apartment I'd chosen, married to the man I'd chosen twice, with my son asleep in the next room, I finally understood what freedom actually meant. Not the absence of difficulty, not the presence of safety. Just the ability to choose your own path and live with the consequences, knowing that you're strong enough to handle whatever comes. The city glittered below us, full of people living their own complicated stories. Some of them were probably standing in ballrooms right now, performing happiness they didn't feel. Some were running from the wrong things. Some were trapped in gilded cages, convincing themselves it was love. I'd been all of those people. Now I was someone else. Someone who'd learned that the only real safety is the kind you build yourself, brick by brick, choice by choice, surrounded by people who see you clearly and love you anyway. James stirred in his room, making soft sleep sounds. Daejin went to check on him while I stayed at the window, looking out at everything I'd survived and everything still to come. Tomorrow, I'd wake up and take James to the park. I'd work on my thesis. I'd have dinner with Daejin and argue about whether James needed another sweater. I'd live the small, ordinary, beautiful life I'd fought so hard to build. And maybe someday, if another woman found herself dripping champagne in a ballroom, surrounded by people who'd decided her humiliation was entertainment, she'd remember my story. She'd remember that you can walk away, that you can fight back, that the difference between protection and control, between safety and possession, matters more than reputation or respectability or what anyone else thinks, that you can be your own rescue, that sometimes the dangerous man is the safe one, and the safe man is the dangerous one, and the real trick is learning to tell the difference. That freedom isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and choosing yourself anyway. I turned away from the window and went to join my family, my real family, the one I'd chosen, fought for, and built from the wreckage of everything I'd thought I needed. It wasn't perfect, But it was mine, and that made it exactly right.